Nancy could see the tension in Jason's face easing, his laughter becoming more genuine as the night wore on. By Sunday, the small apartment felt transformed by the warmth and love they had brought into it. They spent the day lounging around, savoring the last hours they had together before Nancy had to return to Lagos. They spoke of their dreams, of all the things they wanted to accomplish, and Nancy reminded Jason again and again how much she believed in him. As she packed her suitcase that evening, Jason watched her, his heart heavy but full. He hugged her again, even tighter than when she had first arrived, feeling the strength of her love and support lifting him. "Thank you for coming, Nancy. You don't know how much I needed this," he whispered. She held his face gently, looking up at him with eyes full of love. "You're going to be just fine, Jason. I believe in you. And no matter what, I'll be here." As Nancy finally left, Jason felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her visit had reminded him that he wasn't defined by his setbacks. Instead, he was defined by his resilience and by the love of a woman who believed in him completely. That weekend had been a gift, one that rekindled his hope and gave him the strength to start over, no matter how many times it took. "Hey, beautiful." Jason's voice was warm and full of affection as he checked in on Nancy. It was Sunday night, and he had been thinking about her all day, replaying each moment of their wonderful weekend together. "Hey, you," Nancy replied, her voice soft and filled with warmth. "I just got in a little while ago. Flight was smooth, no worries. But I already miss you." Jason chuckled, feeling his heart swell. "Miss you too, babe. Can't stop thinking about the weekend. It was perfect. I don't know how you always know exactly what I need." Nancy sighed, the memories of their time together flashing through her mind. "I had a great time too, Jason. I wish we didn't have to say goodbye so soon, but I know it's just for now. We're building something special, and I'm so proud of you." They spent the next few minutes reminiscing, laughing about the little things: Jason's attempt at making breakfast, their impromptu dance in his tiny kitchen, the endless jokes they shared. "Thank you for always being there for me, Nancy. You're my rock, my reason to keep pushing forward," Jason said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I'm going to work hard and make you proud. You already do," she replied, her voice gentle. "Remember, we're in this together. No matter what, I'm always here." As the clock ticked closer to midnight, Nancy yawned, and Jason noticed. "You better get some rest, love," he said softly. "You got a big day tomorrow, and I need my queen well rested." She laughed, touched by his sweetness. All right. I really don't want to hang up, but I'll try and get some sleep." "Good night, beautiful," Jason whispered, his voice full of warmth. "Dream of me." "Good night, Jason. Love you more," he replied with a smile, lingering on the line until she finally said her last goodbye and hung up. As Jason put his phone down, he felt more inspired than ever. Their love was his anchor, and he knew that no matter the challenges, he had someone who truly believed in him. And that thought alone gave him strength for whatever the future held. 6 months had passed, and still, Jason was trapped in a cycle of waiting, hoping, and endless disappointment. He had applied to every job he could find, from top companies in Abuja to small, obscure businesses, even reaching out to former colleagues for leads. Each day he checked his emails, hoping to see a response, but his inbox remained silent. Every rejection, every ignored application felt like a weight pressing on his shoulders. The once confident man was now battling self-doubt, struggling to keep his head above water. Jason's small savings had long dried up, and he found himself barely scraping by. The little money Nancy sent to him occasionally helped with groceries and utilities, but it was nowhere near enough to maintain a steady lifestyle. And even though Nancy assured him it was fine, he hated feeling like a burden. Nancy, as well as her family, continued to support him with encouragement and prayers. Her brother, Mr. Grayson, even offered to set Jason up with some of his contacts, but nothing had materialized so far. Nancy's calls were his lifeline, her voice a soothing balm to his soul, urging him to keep going, to believe that his hard work would eventually pay off. She reminded him constantly of his potential, telling him, "This is just a storm, Jason. It'll pass. I believe in you." But even her unwavering faith couldn't chase away the doubts that crept into Jason's mind. One evening, sitting alone in his dimly lit room, Jason received a text notification from Nancy. "Hey, love. How was your day?" He looked at his phone, fingers hovering over the keyboard, hesitant to reply. He didn't want to lie, but he also didn't want her to know how deeply this was affecting him. How each day felt like an uphill battle he was beginning to lose. Still, he mustered the courage to respond. It was all right. Just another day. Moments later, his phone rang. Jason. Her voice was gentle, her concern clear. "Tell me what's really going on. I can hear it in your voice." He sighed, leaning his head back against the wall. "Nancy, I'm trying so hard, but nothing is working. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I'm chasing a dream that doesn't want me." There was a silence on the other end. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice steady. "Don't you dare say that, Jason. You are more than good enough. This world can be harsh, but you can't let it make you doubt yourself." Jason tried to find comfort in her words, but the weight of his struggle was too heavy. "I appreciate everything you and your family are doing for me, Nancy, but I feel like I'm drowning, like I'm letting everyone down." Moments later, his phone rang. Jason. Her voice was gentle, her concern clear. "Tell me what's really going on. I can hear it in your voice." He sighed, leaning his head back against the wall. "Nancy, I'm trying so hard, but nothing is working. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe I'm chasing a dream that doesn't want me." There was a silence on the other end. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice steady. "Don't you dare say that, Jason. You are more than good enough. This world can be harsh, but you can't let it make you doubt yourself." Jason tried to find comfort in her words, but the weight of his struggle was too heavy. "I appreciate everything you and your family are doing for me, Nancy, but I feel like I'm drowning, like I'm letting everyone down." Weeks later, Jason was preparing to head to yet another interview, determined to keep trying. He'd done everything to prepare, studying the company, rehearsing answers, and even borrowing a nicer shirt from a neighbor to look more professional. The interview went smoothly, or so he thought, but the following week, he received a curt email. "Thank you for your interest. However, we've decided to proceed with other candidates." The rejection stung, and Jason felt a crack forming in his resolve. He was running out of options, both financially and emotionally, later that evening as he sat in his cramped apartment. His phone buzzed with a message from Nancy. "Jason, let's talk. It's important." He dialed her number, his heart pounding, wondering if she had finally reached her limit. Was she about to end things? "Nancy," he answered, voice tense. "Jason, I need you to listen carefully," she said, her tone unexpectedly steady. "My brother has a friend, a businessman, who's willing to meet with you. He owns a chain of restaurants in Abuja, and he might have an opening in management. It's not what you originally wanted, but it's a start." Jason's mind raced. A job was a job, even if it wasn't in his field. "Thank you, Nancy. I'll take it. I'll do anything." Nancy exhaled, a sense of relief in her voice. "I knew you would. We're going to get through this, Jason. Together." The next morning, Jason dressed carefully, straightening the shirt that he'd kept so pristine. He arrived at the restaurant feeling a strange mixture of hope and dread. He needed this job more than anything, and the desperation in his heart had him praying harder than he ever had as he waited to be called in. He watched people come and go, his mind flooded with thoughts of his future with Nancy, of the life they dreamed of building together. But just as his name was called, Jason noticed a familiar figure in the corner of the restaurant. Evans, his old friend who had led him down a path of distractions in Abuja. Evans was talking to a couple of people, laughing, appearing well off, and completely unaffected by the struggles Jason had been facing. For a split second, Jason's resolve faltered. He remembered the easy, carefree lifestyle Evans had offered him and the frustration of facing rejection after rejection. But then he shook off the temptation, took a deep breath, and walked toward the manager's office, his mind fixed on Nancy's voice urging him forward. The interview went well, but days passed without any news. Jason felt himself spiraling, the suspense nearly breaking him as he waited for a call that could change his life. Every day felt like a test of his endurance, a tug of war between hope and despair. But through it all, Nancy's encouragement kept him going, her belief in him a light in the darkness. Then, on a quiet Sunday evening, his phone finally rang. The restaurant manager's number flashed on the screen, and Jason picked up, his heart pounding. "Jason, we're pleased to offer you the position," the voice on the other end said. Jason's vision blurred with tears as the words sank in. After 6 months of relentless struggle, rejection, and doubt, he finally had a breakthrough. Nancy's voice echoed in his mind. Steady and true, "I believe in you." And as he closed his eyes, he knew this was only the beginning. Jason sat on his bed one evening, staring at his phone, his thoughts racing. Despite everything Evans had put him through, a small part of him wondered if maybe, just maybe, Evans was his only real shot at getting a good job. After all, Evans seemed to know the right people and had managed to find success in Abuja. Desperation, mixed with a lingering sense of loyalty, gnawed at Jason until he finally decided to call Nancy and share his idea. "Nancy, I was thinking," he started hesitantly when she picked up. I want to give it one more try with Evans. Maybe he's finally ready to help me." There was a brief silence on the line, and Jason could almost picture Nancy's skeptical expression. "Jason," she said slowly, "are you sure that's a good idea? Evans hasn't exactly been supportive." I know, Jason replied, sounding both defensive and hopeful. "But I feel like I've exhausted every other option. He's connected Nancy, and maybe this time he'll actually help me find something. I can't keep struggling like this." Nancy took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I get that you're frustrated, Jason, and I know you're doing everything you can. But Evans has let you down before. I just don't want you to get hurt again or to waste more time on empty promises. I understand. But what if this time is different?" Jason pressed, his voice pleading. "I don't have much left to lose. And besides, it's only a meeting just to see if he'll actually follow through this time." Nancy hesitated, her mind filled with memories of the past months, of Jason's struggles and Evan's repeated excuses. But she could hear the desperation in Jason's voice, and despite her misgivings, she wanted to support him. She knew how much this meant to him, even if it came with risks. "All right, Jason," she said finally, her voice soft but serious. "I trust you. Just be careful, okay? Don't let him pull you down again. If he doesn't come through this time, promise me you'll walk away for good." Jason felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Nancy. I promise. This is the last time. I just have to know if he'll help." The following evening, Jason texted Evans, who responded surprisingly quickly, setting up a meeting at an upscale lounge in the heart of Abuja. Jason's hope flickered, imagining that maybe this time, Evans would actually introduce him to someone who could offer him a real opportunity. But in the back of his mind, Nancy's voice echoed, urging him to stay cautious. When Jason arrived at the lounge, Evans was already there, sipping on a cocktail and looking every bit the picture of success. He waved Jason over with a wide grin. "Jay, long time, man," he greeted, clapping him on the back. "Glad you finally took me up on my offer. I've got connections, and I can get you in on something big." Jason felt a cautious optimism as they sat down and talked. Evans went on about his recent business dealings, mentioning powerful people and lucrative contracts. He made it sound easy. Too easy. When Jason finally asked him about a job, Evans waved his hand dismissively. Look, Jay, I've got an idea for you, but it's a bit unconventional, Evans began, leaning in conspiratorially. Forget these 9 to 5 jobs. They're a waste of time. There's real money to be made if you're willing to go all in. Jason felt a flicker of doubt, remembering Nancy's warning. What kind of opportunity are we talking about? Evans leaned closer, his voice dropping. High returns, minimal effort. I've got a few connections in, let's just say, exclusive circles. All you have to do is help me with some deals, networking, facilitating some exchanges. You'll make more in a week than most people do in a month. Jason's heart sank. He realized that Evans wasn't talking about any legitimate job. He was offering Jason a role in something shady, something that went against every principle he held. Evans, Jason said, trying to mask his disappointment. I thought you were going to help me find an actual job. Something I can be proud of. Evans shrugged, unfazed. Pride doesn't pay the bills, Jason. You're broke, right? No one's offering you anything solid. But this can change your life. Man. Jason felt his stomach churn, his hands clenching. He had sacrificed too much, struggled too hard, and faced too many rejections to compromise his integrity now. And he could hear Nancy's voice, steady and unyielding, reminding him of who he was and what he stood for after a long silence. Jason shook his head. Thanks, but no thanks, Evans. I can't do this. Evans looked at him with mild irritation, then laughed, shrugging. Suit yourself. But don't come crying to me when you're still broke a year from now. Jason stood, forcing a polite smile. Take care, Evans. I'm done with shortcuts. As he left the lounge, he dialed Nancy's number, feeling a strange mixture of relief and pride. When she picked up, he didn't have to say a word. She could hear the resolution in his voice. Evans, she asked simply. Nothing but empty promises and bad ideas, he replied. You were right, Nancy. I'll keep looking for something real. I won't compromise, not for anyone. Nancy's voice was warm and full of admiration. I knew you'd make the right choice, Jason. And I'm so proud of you for sticking to your values. We'll get through this together. Frustration had been eating away at Jason for weeks. After countless dead ends and rejections, the appeal of Evans' offer grew stronger in his mind. Each day felt like a battle between his conscience and his desperation. Eventually, the weight of his situation pushed him over the edge, and with a resigned sigh, he gave in to Evans' deal. It started simply enough. Evans introduced Jason to a few clients, all well-dressed, powerful-looking men who seemed impressed by Jason's ability to keep things discreet. True to his word, Evans connected Jason to lucrative contracts where he acted as a middleman, facilitating transactions and deals that never saw the light of day. At first, Jason felt a pang of guilt, but the money, it was beyond anything he'd ever earned. Within a few weeks, his bank account had transformed. He had enough to pay his rent, buy new clothes, and even indulge in a few luxuries he'd only dreamed of. For the first time in his life, he felt what it was like to live without the constant worry of bills and expenses. He was dining at exclusive restaurants, driving a sleek car, and attending lavish events, places he had only ever seen from a distance. Nancy, however, noticed a shift almost immediately. One evening during a call, she picked up on the changes in his tone and lifestyle. So, what's this big contract about? She asked, trying to sound casual but genuinely curious. Jason hesitated, forcing himself to stay calm. It's a temporary contract with a wealthy businessman in Abuja. He hired me to handle some special tasks for him. Nothing permanent, but he's paying well. He hoped his vague explanation would satisfy her, and for now it seemed to. I'm glad you're getting some opportunities, Nancy said, though there was a slight note of caution in her voice. Just remember to stay true to yourself, Jason. The money's good, but it doesn't change who you are. Jason nodded, even though a part of him felt a pang of guilt. Of course, Nancy. This is just a way to build up some savings. Once I'm on my feet, I'll look for something stable. But as the weeks turn into months, Jason's life began to resemble Evan's more and more. He had more cash than he'd ever seen and started embracing the lavish lifestyle, clubbing every weekend, splurging on designer clothes, and networking with Abuja's elite. Evans was his constant companion, pulling him deeper into the world of shady deals and easy money. Jason kept telling himself it was only temporary, that he would eventually leave it all behind. But with every deal, every successful night, he found himself slipping further away from the man he once was, despite the luxurious life. Jason's relationship with Nancy grew more strained. He became harder to reach, their conversations shorter and less frequent. Nancy sensed something was amiss. During one of their calls, she asked, "Jason, are you happy? I mean, really happy? You sound different these days." Jason forced a laugh. "Of course, I am. Things are finally going well for me. I can't be struggling forever, you know?" "But you're not the same," she replied softly. "I miss the Jason I knew. Just be careful. You know I believe in you, but I don't want to lose you to this new life." Jason brushed off her concerns, reassuring her that he was the same man she had always known. But deep down, he knew he was changing, and it scared him. He had become someone who relied on fast cash and backroom deals, a far cry from the man who once dreamed of a simple, honest life with Nancy. Then one evening, as Jason and Evans were celebrating a successful deal, Evans introduced Jason to a few influential figures in the room. "This is Jason, one of our finest," Evans bragged, clapping Jason on the back. Jason enjoyed the praise, feeling powerful in a way he never had before. But as the night wore on, Jason realized he had barely taken a breath. His life was now a whirlwind of late nights and high stakes, and he had lost any real sense of himself the next morning. As Jason looked around his lavish apartment, the shiny clothes hanging in the closet, the new gadgets scattered around the room, he felt a pang of emptiness. This wasn't what he had worked so hard for. This was a facade, a world of illusions built on quick money and fragile friendships. He wanted to tell Nancy everything, to confess his fears, but he knew he couldn't. The truth would shatter the image he had built for her and ruin the dreams she had of their future. And so, Jason continued to play the part, living large by day and restless by night, haunted by the life he had left behind. He had gained the world but was slowly losing himself, bit by bit, trapped in a cycle he wasn't sure he could ever escape. Jason had been feeling restless for weeks, a persistent feeling gnawing at him, as though he was at a precipice. He'd earned more money than he'd ever imagined, and life was opulent, but hollow. He found himself thinking of Nancy, the one person who believed in him when he had nothing, the woman he'd promised to build a life with. That was when he decided to finally take the next step and make his intentions known to her family. With determination, he went all out, buying lavish gifts for her, designer bags, the latest heels, high-end clothes that screamed elegance and class. But the centerpiece was a dazzling diamond ring that he knew would take her breath away. He pictured her face, her shy smile, and the sparkle in her eyes when he'd finally slipped the ring onto her finger. This was his chance to prove to her, and to himself, that he was now the man he'd always promised he would become. The day he arrived at Nancy's family home in Lagos, the atmosphere was electric. Her parents and siblings had long awaited this moment. Everyone knew Jason as Nancy's first love, the man she had stood by through every trial. Seeing him arrive with gifts and a confidence that spoke of success, her family couldn't hide their excitement. They greeted him warmly, welcoming him with open arms. Nancy, too, tried to share in the joy, smiling and laughing with everyone. Yet as she glanced at Jason, something in his demeanor seemed different. He was lavish, charming, and confident, yes, but there was a hollowness in his gaze that she couldn't shake off. Jason was almost too polished, too rehearsed. And while her family saw his new life as a testament to his success, Nancy's heart felt a slight tug, a warning that whispered something was amiss. As the engagement party went on, Jason took Nancy aside, pulling her to a quiet corner where they could have a moment to themselves. He held her hand, caressing her fingers, and looked into her eyes with a smile. Nancy, he began, his voice low and tender. I've dreamed of this moment for so long. You're the reason I've come this far. Every step, every struggle, it's always been for us. Nancy looked at him, feeling her heart swell with love yet tinged with unease. She forced a smile, hoping to bury her doubts. I've always believed in you, Jason. You know that. Jason grinned and slipped the ring out of his pocket, holding it up before her. Then believe in us now, he said softly as he slid the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. Her family, who had been watching from afar, erupted into cheers as they saw the diamond sparkle on her hand. Her mother wiped away tears, and her siblings clapped and laughed. It was the perfect scene, filled with joy and celebration. Yet as Nancy looked at the ring, she felt an inexplicable chill. She wanted this moment to be perfect, yet something deep within her whispered that Jason was hiding a part of himself. After the celebration, they said their goodbyes to family and friends and headed to Eco Hotel, where Jason had booked a luxurious suite. It was a beautiful, expansive room overlooking the sparkling Lagos skyline. As they walked in, Jason tried to lighten the mood, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. To us, he toasted, handing her a glass. To new beginnings. They clinked glasses, and Nancy took a sip, eyeing him quietly. She noticed how his eyes avoided hers just a little too long, how he seemed almost restless, as if waiting for something to happen. She set her glass down and looked at him earnestly. Jason, are you happy? He blinked, surprised by the question. Of course, Nancy. How could I not be? I've got everything I ever wanted, and you're here with me now. What more could I ask for? But Nancy shook her head, holding his gaze. I mean, really happy. Jason, you've changed. I just want to know if you're doing okay. If this is really the life you want. Jason's face faltered for a split second, his polished smile cracking under her intense gaze. He forced a laugh, brushing it off. Nancy, this is everything we've always talked about, right? I'm doing this for us. I know I've been busy and life's been hectic, but it's all worth it. We're going to have the life we deserve. She took his hand, squeezing it. Jason, I'll always stand by you, but I can't ignore the feeling that something's changed. And it scares me to think there's a part of your life I don't know about. Jason looked away, tension creeping into his shoulders. He felt the weight of her words, a reminder of the secrets he'd kept, the compromises he'd made. For a moment, he considered telling her everything, letting her in on the truth. But as he looked at her, innocent, trusting, believing in the man she thought he was, he knew he couldn't risk shattering her view of him. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her tightly, as if hoping to silence her doubts. Nancy, you're the only truth in my life that matters. Trust me, whatever I've done, it's all for us. Nancy rested her head against his chest, but her mind couldn't shake the growing worry. She loved him deeply, but she sensed the presence of a darkness she couldn't quite define. For now, she clung to the warmth of his embrace, hoping that in time, the doubts would fade and the man she had loved from the start would reveal himself again. As they stood there in silence, with the night enveloping the city outside their window, the question lingered between them, unspoken yet undeniable. Could Jason truly escape the shadows he had stepped into, or would the secrets he carried threaten to unravel everything they had built together? Weeks had slipped by since Jason had proposed to Nancy, yet the distance between them felt greater than ever. His one strong resolve to make time for her was waning, overshadowed by the excitement of his newfound lifestyle. His work consumed him, and his evenings were spent with the big boys of Abuja, engaging in lavish parties, discussing deals that felt increasingly detached from the life he had once envisioned with Nancy. In the pulsating heart of the city, the nightclubs hummed with energy. On this particular evening, Jason arrived early at one of the trendiest clubs, eager to unwind from the week's grind. He ordered his favorite drink, an iclog, and leaned back in his chair, surveying the crowd. The club was alive with laughter, music, and the vibrant energy of youth. As he sipped his drink, a stunning lady caught his eye from across the room. Her radiant smile lit up the dimly lit space, and her long hair cascaded over her shoulders like a waterfall. She was dressed in a figure-hugging dress that accentuated her curves, effortlessly drawing the attention of everyone around her. When their eyes met, a spark ignited between them, and Jason couldn't help but return her smile. The lady, sensing his interest, tossed her hair back playfully and approached him with a confident stride. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, her voice smooth and inviting. "No, not at all," Jason replied, gesturing for her to sit. As she settled into the chair beside him, he felt a thrill of excitement course through him. Flirting with her seemed harmless, just a way to pass the time until Evans arrived. "I'm Zara," she introduced herself, her eyes gleaming under the club's lights. "Jason," he responded, offering a charming smile. They began to chat, their conversation flowing effortlessly. Zara was witty and vivacious, sharing stories about her life in Abuja, her recent travels, and her love for adventure. Jason found himself laughing more than he had in weeks, momentarily forgetting the weight of his responsibilities and the uncertainty of his relationship with Nancy. As the night wore on, the chemistry between them intensified. Jason found himself leaning in closer, captivated by her stories and the magnetic pull of her presence. Every time their hands brushed against each other, electricity crackled in the air. The thought of Nancy lingered at the back of his mind, but the thrill of the moment and the allure of Zara were hard to resist. "Are you always this charming, or is it just me?"